Welcome back to the 12 Stripes Deep podcast. I am Mary, your host, and I have a very special guest and friend with me today, Dr. Sara Bartel. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, it's such a joy to be here with you, Mary.
Yeah, and so for those of you who don't know Sara, she is a Catholic moral theologian and sex and marriage coach. Sara, I would love for you to tell people what that means. I think you have the coolest job. So tell us, what do you do to help women and couples?
With my husband Nathan, we have our Cana Feast online ministry in which we help couples grow closer to each other and closer to God through our programs like the Little Way of Marriage and our Abundant course helps couples grow in their joy and feeling like they're on the same page and renew their connection. And then I also help women, Catholic women who are engaged or married, to grow in enjoying their love life with their husbands in a moral way in line with our Catholic sexual ethics. And I do that with my Delight course, and I also have a My Delight podcast.
Yes. Oh, I love that so much. So I want to talk a little bit about intimacy just to start this conversation off, because I think when we hear intimacy, it depends on the person, like what you think of when you hear intimacy, right? I think a lot of people think of sex, but there's lots of different kinds of intimacy. So if you don't mind, can you define intimacy for us?
Yeah, well, I maybe people have heard this, at youth group talks or whatnot, but it's like into me, see, like letting someone
Yes.
see into you. It's really this openness and vulnerability where you can, um, share yourself, your true, authentic self with another. And this can be physical intimacy, of course, if with sex and marriage, but emotional intimacy, which sex should be based on, so that's that heart-to-heart connection between husband and wife, where you share about your feelings and what's really going on inside you interiorly. And then there's spiritual intimacy as well, where you let someone, your husband, which I'm just talking in terms of intimacy in marriage here, but spiritual intimacies where husband and wife let each other in on their spiritual life, praying together, sharing with each other about their growth in faith. So and then there's intellectual intimacy and communicative intimacy. I think anytime you're sharing about your dreams and memories, your goals, this is really sharing more of that interior of who you are. That is part of intimacy.
So it's all of it. It's not just one
Yeah.
thing. Like when we say intimacy, it's not just sex. It's not just emotional. When we talk about intimacy, it's all of it. Like I love how you said, into me, see. And we're a lot of different, like we're made up, we're a whole person, right? We're not just a body. We're not just a soul. Like we have emotions, we have thoughts, we have memories. And it's really important to not separate that from what's happening in the bedroom, right? And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and so I know especially for my listeners and for those who've read the book, those who've struggled with infertility, a huge part, one of the main reasons I wanted to have you on today is to talk about sex when you're infertile, because it's so easy for sex to become a chore or just like something that you do to produce a goal. And that's not how God designed it. Now, it's understandable, like no judgment on anybody who gets into the situation. I have absolutely been there and I didn't realize that actually probably until after I had my hysterectomy. Um, and so I wish I'd had someone having this conversation with me sooner. But can you talk a little bit about that struggle? If you've spoken to any women who've struggled with this, and how infertile couples can kind of push through this and get to a better place when it comes to their sexual intimacy.
Absolutely. Yes, I have spoken to women in this situation as well. And I'm actually subfertile. I've had secondary infertility twice.
Oh
So
my
even
gosh, I
though,
didn't know that.
yeah, surprise, we have our five children, but there are big gaps between some of the kids.
Okay.
And so I also remember what that was like, really trying for a baby that just wasn't coming for years. And what we have to look at is in our Catholic faith, the understanding of sex in marriage is that there are these two ends, that the unitive and procreative end, and they're integrated. And when we're just focused on conceiving that baby, a lot of times there is a diminishing or disregard of the unitive end of sex and marriage, and this gets us into all kinds of trouble. Or we're just doing it to do it, to hopefully conceive, not as an expression of love and share, mutual self-giving where you're bringing your whole heart into it, and not focusing on the joy and the pleasure of that union. It can be really devastating, actually. There was a woman in my delight who was, she and her husband were working on conceiving. It had been some years of infertility. She shared with me that they had sex like 16 days in a row over her fertile period.
Oh my
By
God.
day 9, 10, 11, she was in tears after making love. And
So
my heart
basically
just,
forcing herself.
yes. Yeah. This wasn't something her husband was
Right,
asking,
right, right. I understand. Yeah.
but yes, she and they were so focused on this goal, like let's just hit every fertile day and all the, days on the ends, that it really became awful, and it just
Right.
breaks my heart. So what I recommend to couples is don't forget the joy of the union. Make love for the pleasure of it, for the connection, that, the celebrating your heart to heart connection and celebrating your sacrament of marriage, because there are so many goods that come from making love. When you have that proper balance and focus,
Right.
you can draw more grace into your marriage. You're renewing your marital covenant. St. Thomas Aquinas says that as often as a Catholic couple who are both in the state of grace come together in the sexual intimacy, they grow in grace and glory. So
Oh my
this is a
gosh.
profound prayer. And there are a lot of parallels with the Eucharist as well, since this is
Ooh.
total physical sharing that comes to, as a fruit and a renewal of intimacy, right? That is preceded by an emotional connection and a verbal exchange. Like, look at how the Mass is set up. This is how God does it.
Okay, tell me about this.
Yes. Well, there's a lot of things about the Mass that can illuminate our practice of sex and marriage. First of
Okay.
all, what I was going to talk about was that God has a dialogue with us first. He shares his word with us, his heart with us in the liturgy of the word.
Oh my
He gives
gosh.
us these readings that are chosen for that day, and
Whoa.
we
Okay, you're kind of blowing
respond,
my mind right now.
right? And we respond through the responsorial psalm and then through the prayers and petitions. There is this back and forth exchange
Huh.
where we, have a dialogue with God and communicate with him. And then we come to the physical communion with God in the
Where
Eucharist.
we become one, basically.
Yes, and become this communion of persons with him. And I like to point to this especially when, there's a lot of sex advice in the Christian world that then sort of seeps over into
Yeah.
Catholic circles. And there is this false idea that men need physical intimacy through sex and women need emotional connection.
Right.
If
Right.
you give your husband the physical connection, then he'll be able to give you the
Right.
emotional connection.
I can see that.
And this
Yeah.
is not how God has it set up. He
No.
has the dialogue with us first in the Mass,
I love
the
it.
talking, the sharing, the exchange, and then we celebrate and, we have that
Fascinating.
physical intimacy with the Eucharist.
Yeah, and I kind of think of like he made us different on purpose, but that's because we're supposed to become one and together have that wholeness. So like I don't know, tell me if this is wrong, but I kind of think about it as I would say my husband and I have the classic like he tends more towards physical touch, I tend more towards the emotional, side of things. But he has kind of taught me the value of physical touch so that I appreciate it more and I bring out the emotional side of him more. So
Yeah.
like it's meant to be complementary, I would think. Not that like it's not this exchange of like or this transaction where you give me this and I give you
Oh,
that,
yeah.
but really meant to be to work towards that whole, right?
Oh yeah, God chooses two different people to come together in marriage, and we do draw, you help each other become more whole by what we
Yeah.
draw out of each other. Absolutely. But
So
the truth
appreciate
is, men need emotional connection, and women need
yeah,
physical
absolutely.
connection as well, right?
Yes.
And it's so reductionist, it's so like stereotypical as well to say like,
Yeah.
well, all men just need that physical connection. I think in our culture, men's emotional skills and emotional intelligence is not, it's like often underdeveloped
Yeah,
in, in how what we expect of men and how we teach them to be a good strong man.
for
But
sure.
many men are very in touch with their emotions, and also yeah, not every man is the stereotypical, like, just wants sex all the time kind of guy.
For sure.
And having physical touch as your primary love language, that does not mean that, like, then you need, like, that means lots of sex. The author of the love language has made sure to distinguish that physical touch does not mean sex in
Thank you for clarifying that.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
good.
But back to the mass,
Yeah.
when we as Catholics, we're called to participate in Mass with our whole self, to show up as a whole person, to be invested and involved, body, mind, and spirit. And it's our Sunday obligation is fulfilled by us showing up at Mass. But is that how the church calls us? Like, just get your bum in the pew for an hour, leave, and you can be checked out mentally, and then that fulfills your Sunday obligation. Like, is that the fullness of what we're called to? No, there's a phrase
No.
actually that the church uses to describe how we're called to participate in Mass. And it's that full, conscious, active participation.
Oh, cool. I don't
Even
think
if
I've
we're
heard
not a
that.
Eucharistic minister. Yeah, and it shows that it's so that all of us in the congregation are accompanying all the parts of the mass, with our whole spirit, and we are bringing our prayers, and we are, even as the priest offers the prayers for us and collects them, like, our intention and will and offering is what we're directing towards that prayer, and then he offers it all up to the Father, and the Trinity on our behalf. So full conscious active participation. Even if you're not a lector or Eucharistic minister, you're really involved in the Mass just by being there and praying and bringing your whole self and all the fruits of your week, all your struggles and joys and triumphs and labor. All of that is what gets brought up symbolically through the offering of the bread and wine that are brought to the altar,
Mm.
blessed, broken, transformed, and given back to us to nourish us. And this again is such a great model for how we are to show up in lovemaking with our spouse. That it's not just like, okay, we did it, like,
Right.
for fertility, not just like, okay, well, we did the deed, there was the male's climax inside the female's vagina, and so now there's a chance of conception, roll over, go to sleep.
Right.
It's like bringing your whole self, your
Right.
heart. What do I want to say to you today, tonight, with my body? I give myself to you, I receive you. Let's take some time and care with the whole environment, emotional environment and physical environment, for our lovemaking. Not just this perfunctory thing, but we're really investing ourselves in it. And also, I would say for women, like, giving yourself the rest and care that you need, or asking for that, so that you have space around each time of lovemaking, so that each time really is welcome, and that you really can show up without it being a chore, right? And
Amen.
having the freedom and the courage and the confidence to decline when, if you would make love that night, you would just be wanting to get it done with as soon as possible.
Yes.
That's a sign that you should say, I love you, I want to be close to you, but tonight is not going to be the best night for me to make love. Let's wait, until I get
Yes.
more rest, or until a better night. Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that, because I was going to ask about that. I don't think people think of that I mean, I guess you can, skip a whole fertile window. And I if you
Yes.
but that's really, it's something to be considered and discerned. And I love how you say to prioritize rest. Like, prioritizing rest and self-care is investing into your sexual intimacy. Like just think about that for just sit with that for a second.
Say it
Especially
again. That's so
yes,
profound.
prioritizing rest and self-care is an investment into your sexual intimacy. Like you cannot invest yourself if there's not enough of yourself to give. So we gotta stop thinking about this sex life as separate and distinct part of our marriage, but it's the whole thing. It's all one. So it starts outside of the bedroom. And I always love to say it starts with how we love each other. That includes how we love ourselves. So, you know, yeah, and it might be really hard. It might be really heartbreaking to think, oh, we've lost a month. We've lost a month of being able to try to conceive, if that's what your body or your marriage, needs to avoid that. But like, think about what you're investing into your marriage and how holy that is. And I just don't think people think about that.
And what an act of trust, too, because
Yes,
God can help you conceive that baby. He can work through that, in his own time, in his own ways, and he will, and yeah, that is just exactly what I recommend to women who are hoping to conceive, who are in my course is don't have sex too much that you are, getting burnt out from it. Put
yes,
lots of space in there. And if that just means we're only making love on the weekends because we're so worn out during
for
the work
sure.
week from our jobs, just that's fine. Only have sex on the weekend. Maybe
Yeah.
just once too. Don't feel like, okay, now it's the weekend. We really gotta
Right.
hit
Or
it,
like
right?
multiple times a day or like whatever. Like
Oh,
don't,
yeah.
I love how you said it's trust. That's what it is. God doesn't need 17 acts of intercourse or a certain amount, like just one. And like my dad used to tell me God can't be outdone in generosity. And that has stuck with me. So like if God is calling us to have a child, um it'll happen with one, at a different month.
Yeah.
It's really about trust.
And a lot of it is when we're not focusing on
For
that
sure.
goal. When sex is, I mean, being super goal oriented in sex is really counterproductive. It's counterproductive for pleasure and libido. And
Hmm.
also, I think for a lot of couples, in terms of hoping to conceive as well, that
Yes.
it really both these things, it's sort of like falling asleep. These are things that it works best when you let it sneak up on you, if you know
Yeah.
what I mean.
Yes.
When you're like, okay, I'm going to fall asleep, then you're driving sleep away. All you can do is set up the conditions that best allow sleep to take place if it's going to take place. Or
Yes.
same with nursing a child. I nursed my five children when they were babies. And if you are like, okay, this child has to nurse right now and you're forcing it, that baby's, if they don't want to nurse, it is not going to happen. You just have to set up the conditions to allow it to happen if it's going to.
I
And
love
same
that.
thing for like trying to have an orgasm. It's if you're
Mm.
like, okay, I'm gonna get there, then it's more like you need to surrender to it. And I feel like conceiving as well, having had
For
these years
sure.
of hoping to conceive, yes, it was both times after we had a 5-year bout of secondary infertility. Both times it was when I was not super focused on trying to conceive that I conceived. And this is a
Hmm.
story here again and
Yeah.
again, when a couple's like, oh, well, they decided to give up on trying to conceive and adopt or do foster care or focus on something else, focus on
Mhm.
charity or, have adventures. Then the conception sneaks in. There's some mechanism that science can't quite explain by which
Sure.
we're really like hyper focused or vigilant or, then there's something about the stress of that can actually prevent us
Right.
from allowing conception to happen.
I think that's helpful to think of when you're like, oh, I don't want to miss a month, but it's like, no, this is an investment into your health, whatever health. Like, um, but also I just also want to encourage people to take a moment, like you're gonna feel that, then mourn it, grieve it, and step into that as just another part of infertility, that you're already mourning. And this is included in that. If, it's okay to take care of yourself, but also to feel sad about it, then let invite God into that space. Um, you were talking about the two primary purposes of intercourse, procreation and unity before. And I don't know. I wonder if some people think of those as requirements. And but it's not so much, I mean, yes, in a way they're requirements, but it's really instructions, I think, on how to have intercourse that's fulfilling. Those are for us.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
I think that if maybe if you do think of it that way of like, oh, we have to have these two things, like it's something like a weight on us. But really, it's God saying that when you enter into sex this way, where, you're uniting your whole selves and it's bearing fruit in some way, that's the most fulfilling, would you say?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Technically, from the moral theology side of things, what we can derive from our sexual ethics is that an act of lovemaking, having sex, needs to be the kind of act that allows that full unity and is the kind of act where procreation could take place if fertility is
Right.
present.
Right.
Right. But if you're, menopausal or already pregnant, you can't get more pregnant. It's still, right. Or infertile. Um, it's still important that the husband's climax take place inside the wife's vagina because that respects, that his climax is where his procreative power is present. And also, that is the kind of act that fully unites husband and wife's body. So I get questions from people on the, emailing me saying like, I'm already pregnant. Can we do oral to climax,
Mm.
right? For him. No, sorry. No, that's still not the kind of act that it fully respects the meanings here of procreation and union, even if you're already pregnant or had a hysterectomy or whatnot, that this is still a fully bonding act. And I would say to add to that too, just because you do this with the physical and mechanics technically correct there, like I described, and then there's more, right? The heart to heart bonding, right? It
Yeah.
needs so that there's unity, so that you're really consenting and willing and sharing heart to heart connection as well. And I would add into that spiritual intimacy as well. Can you
Oh,
pray
yeah.
together about your love life? Can you pray before, during, or after lovemaking? Or you just like be aware of your souls and that this is spiritual, you're spiritual beings as well, like you mentioned earlier, Mary, and that part of you also is involved in the lovemaking. Yeah, so, but yes, those two meanings, unity and procreation, they are very important. They make a moral difference, and we have to understand them, yes, in a technically specific sense, but also in a broader sense as well. I hope that
It
answers what you're
does. Yeah.
asking.
No, and I'm also wondering if we can touch a little bit on IVF, which is kind of
Mhm.
the flip side. And it's hard, I know, for people to talk about. But I don't want to shy away from it because it's a very important topic. And I don't think it actually serves women like a lot of people think it does. I think a lot of people think that this is merciful for infertile couples. And I can understand why people think
Mhm.
that. But if we don't have these conversations about what it really means, then I think it's very hurtful. It is harmful. It's kind of ironic. I think that what we've been talking about is, um, you know, removing one or the other of the unity or the procreative. Well, um, you could maybe, it is possible maybe to trick ourselves into thinking that, well, IVF puts the procreative in, but it actually removes the unitive.
Mhm.
Can you explain why it's important that even though you might produce a child through IVF, and maybe even though you're having sex at home, that unitive part, that sexual intercourse has to be connected with the conception of a child?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up, Mary. It's more timely than ever with recent government pushes to look for ways to subsidize IVF,
Yeah.
thinking like this is the answer. But yeah, absolutely. So from our Catholic sexual ethics, let's especially looking at Humanae Vitae, the 1968 document by Saint Pope Paul VI, which I encourage everybody to read. It's short and it has all these teachings in there. That is where the church maintains that the unit procreative functions are intrinsically integrated, and to try to separate them actually damages them. So you think, right, with contraception, we're saying, okay, no procreative possibility in this act of lovemaking. We're just seeking the unitive only. But by whether it's hormonal birth control or a barrier method or the pull-out method, by doing something to render that act of intercourse infertile, you're actually damaging the unitive aspect. It's not a full, total self-giving, and you're hurting your love. And then similarly, yes, like you say, with IVF, if we are removing procreation from the bodily, loving self-gift of husband and wife in marriage, we are actually doing a harm here. Because every human person, because of their dignity as a child of God, called to eternity, just possessing this intrinsic dignity, deserves to be conceived by a loving act of, self-gift between their mother and father, deserves to be on a same level, with other human beings who were created in this way, through the natural means, rather than commissioned as a product of a laboratory procedure. And so, removing that procreation from the loving sexual embrace of mother and father really does a moral harm here. And and that's even if you have a perfect scenario, they're like least morally problematic scenarios that some discuss, where you obtain the sperm not through masturbation but through perforated condoms. So the husband and wife are having sex but retaining sperm in the perforated condom, instead of commissioning multiple embryos to be conceived at once in the petri dish, just one at a time, which very few IVF clinics are going to want to do that because it's least efficient.
And I've heard this rationalization from people too.
Oh, that's
yeah.
why you want to conceive multiple.
That this is like it's something they've experienced. They said it's okay because these are the precautions that we've taken.
Right, because you don't know what the quality of each of those embryos is going to be. You want to have, a handful of them at least, so that then you can screen and see that some of them are good, and then choose those embryos that seem top quality to implant. And already here we hear that language of manufacture, of product testing and quality control, right? Which is not what any human being should be subject to, right? Because we all have this dignity. We shouldn't be judged
it's not a language of love. It's a language of sterility, or like it's sterile. It's just like in a
clinical efficiency.
Which I like the conception is in the hand of God, and we're putting it in the hand of physicians. And if you think about it that way, it really, like, rather than I could see how some people could justify this is an act of love. IVF isn't easy. However, it's not the physical act of love in a giving donation through it's not self intercourse. That doesn't exist.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Intercourse, a gift of self.
Intercourse.
But it's in a lab with doctors creating life. It's kind
not even these are lab technicians. They're not doctors.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. So I don't think we talk about that, or people don't think about that when they say IVF. They think of that baby that's going to be the result. But I don't think
they want so much.
Yeah, and that's a good desire. But the desire to be whole. No, that's okay. To be whole and with God is really should be greater.
Yeah, and I just want to be sure to touch on the human cost of these surplus embryos then that are usually left over from a round of IVF. There's these surplus embryos that weren't implanted, and their fate is very vulnerable. Most of them will never be implanted and grow to be born. They will be in cryopreservation indefinitely. They might be used for research purposes and destroyed. It's really a tragedy that we have no good answer for at
Yeah.
this point morally. And in our country, the United States, it's not regulated. These embryos are super vulnerable. The only way they have any legal protection is through commercial law, through business law, because they're
Oh
seen as, yeah,
gosh.
as business products.
As
Whereas,
commodities.
yes, right. Whereas in Germany, which has its history of human rights abuses from the Holocaust, they're much more careful about the laws and regulations that they have around surplus embryos, seeing that this is this is human here.
Yes.
And yeah, and it's not through business law and that they're protected, but just ethical considerations. So I think that's very telling and
Yeah.
scary, and we haven't reckoned with. We have this huge, like thousands and thousands of surplus embryos right now in the United States,
And
and it's
nothing
just
to
going to
do with
grow.
that. Yeah,
I know. But I also want to talk about what I think you alluded to. IVF is not healing your infertility.
for sure.
It's replacing it with this lab procedure, and
Hmm.
you'll never, it's not addressing or healing the underlying causes
Right.
of what is preventing conception. A friend of mine, who she and her husband were starting to get tested to see, is his sperm count low, or, is something going on with her body, as they went down the route of trying to conceive. And the doctor that she saw proposed IVF, and he was like, I can get you pregnant in a few months. And she
Oh,
really took offense at that, rightly so. She's like, you're not going to get me pregnant. My husband and I, we're going to get pregnant
right.
together. And yeah, they did not follow the doctor's invitation or recommendation to go down the route of IVF. And they got care from Napro technology, and turns out she had endometriosis, and she got
She
surgery
needed
with
surgery.
Dr. Hilgers at the
Okay.
Pope Paul VI Institute, and conceived. And then later, even though
Mhm.
she had one ovary removed on one side and one fallopian tube removed on the other side, miraculously, almost, was able to conceive a child later when they weren't trying, they
Stop
weren't
it.
expecting it. They had actually uh, taken on foster children at this point, and
Oh my God.
yeah, isn't it
That's
amazing?
wild. That's amazing.
I know it is. But the thing is to keep in mind that actually the statistics for even just using NAPRO technology aside, just using fertility, crate model, uh, natural family planning to conceive, the rate of success for conception for that is higher than the rate of success with
Yeah.
IVF.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's so much cheaper. And there's
Right.
no moral issues or
Right.
ethical
Right.
issues, and it's your own body and your husband's that you're using. So,
And I always like to say too, like no one can promise a pregnancy, not NAPRO, not
right.
IVF, not a doctor, no one, anyone can. And not every result, even if you have surgery with a NAPRO doctor, like doesn't mean you're gonna get pregnant.
Oh,
Many
right.
women do, and that's a beautiful story, but it doesn't always happen. But I do like to say a lot of times, not every time, the woman gets answers and there's symptom relief. But
Mhm.
ultimately, we don't always understand God's plan. And I'm a perfect example of that person who had 12 surgeries and never got pregnant and
Oh,
needed hysterectomy. But there's doesn't mean that I don't experience joy and fruitfulness and procreation and unity and intercourse. So I just want you to know that no matter where you are in your journey and what the result is, there is hope. That's what I want you to leave this conversation with, is that there is hope. And yeah, so I want to talk about the realistic parts of IVF, but also that there's hope even if the baby doesn't come, you
yeah.
know. So before we wrap this up, Sarah, I love this conversation. I'm so glad you're here. I'm just curious, are there any other struggles, and maybe there aren't, but women, I know you've talked to so many women with so many different issues. Are there any other issues that women who are infertile have brought up to you or have struggled with besides the ones we've talked about, or have we kind of hit them all?
No, I think that, and it is a lot about mindset, but a different aspect of mindset is just um, feeling a lot of disappointment in sex because you are hoping for it to lead to a baby and it hasn't. So then, it can become in a woman's mind and her husband's mind too, this place of disappointment.
Yeah.
And again, that comes to really just prioritizing and elevating the procreative potential to the diminishment of the, sex as a way to connect with, as husband and wife, to strengthen your bond. But yeah, I think that's something that's really important that you have to kind of, I would say in circumstances like that, take a sabbatical, take a 6 week sex sabbatical and
Oh,
really journal, work on your mindset, pray, do some reading, maybe some therapy, look for some healing prayer. And then when you come back together again, make it new. Go back to the garden. Go back
oh,
to
I
just
love
the
that.
simplicity of being man and woman called together and rediscover sexual intimacy in and for itself for that moment of connection with each other and, praying that you will, be open to the graces there and that you'll make love truly. As this communion with each other, and take the time that it needs. I would just say for
Right.
everybody seeking to conceive or not, that I think most couples can benefit from adding a lot more minutes to their lovemaking sessions,
For
like
sure.
minimum 20 to 30, minimum 20 to 30. I say more like 30 to 40 minutes with
And that is,
foreplay, lots of stimulation, and,
yeah,
and
okay.
talking with
I
each
was about to
other.
say, you're not just talking about foreplay, you're talking about heart to heart contact. Like,
Yes.
it's all of it. It's not just foreplay, like physical foreplay.
Yeah, right. Add in some words. Say, what do you want to say to me tonight with your body?
Mm.
How are you feeling? Just maybe tell a sweet story to each other. Yeah, have some talking. So many couples are doing it with no talking.
I
And
know. And it's, I mean, maybe a little satisfying, but it could be so much more. And I
yeah,
just
and the
want to
way
say,
our female brains are designed with more associative thinking, if there aren't words and there isn't talking happening, we're much more likely to have our brains wander and start thinking about
for
our
sure.
to-do lists and grocery lists and stuff.
Right. And I just want to say,
Anyway, some bonus tips there.
if there are any guys listening, for many women, if you offer to pray or invite her to pray with you, that is foreplay. That is a form of
Oh,
foreplay.
yes,
Like
absolutely.
that is sexy to a lot of women, or not just that, but like that emotional part is really, it's like a turn on, Like
Oh, yeah.
let's be honest.
Husbands' voices really are so evocative for wives.
Oh,
They're
yes.
calming, and it grabs their attention. So yeah, I don't think husbands realize so much how powerful their voices are, as far
Yes.
as yeah, to really help their wives get into the mood and be present in the moment with
I
lovemaking.
love it.
But yeah, I think that's the main thing with struggling with infertility and lovemaking is really lean into the unitive function, the unitive aspect of it, and make it nice. Like really focus on just making each session that you come together in lovemaking enjoyable. And then yeah, if God adds a baby into the mix, wonderful. But yeah, like you
Even
were
if
talking
not,
about, Mary, no guarantees for any of
no,
us, right? A
no,
child is a gift, and we can't demand or force this gift.
yes. And ironically, I think everything we're talking about is not just for infertile couples. This is a
Oh,
message for all couples. And that's what I come to find. And, I've been doing this for many years. And I start off with some idea like that God puts on my heart about infertile couples. And I'm like, wait a minute, this applies to everyone. Like when it comes to it, like at the end of the day, we're really not that different. The goal for every married couple's active intercourse is the same.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Plenty of fertile couples, the women feel like sex is a chore also. And
Yes.
same exact advice, so have it less frequently, longer sessions each time.
Yes.
And you can even end up being, if you do the math, more time in lovemaking per week. A couple's having sex like 4 times a week, but it's like a 5 or 10 minute session each time
Yeah.
versus once or twice a week, but a really good long, 45, 60 minute session. You can come out
Yes.
ahead here.
Which is more fulfilling, Like really,
Right.
honestly, it's
Right.
not
Like,
about
it's like
quantity, but
drive through,
quality.
at McDonald's
Yeah.
versus sitting down to dine.
It's
Right. And it's so much more
a gourmet
nourishing.
meal.
Exactly.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love it.
Thanks.
Sarah, thank you so much. This is such an important conversation. Please tell our listeners again where they can find you, your website name, your podcast. Give us all of it.
Oh, thanks. Yes. Okay. I'm at canafeast.com, like the wedding feast at Cana. So canafeast.com. You can find my free guide to enhancing intimacy for Catholic women, for married and engaged Catholic women. I outline 9 skills for body, mind, and spirit to help you increase your delight in love making. And my podcast is My Delight, and my course as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I can't recommend her course enough. You guys go find Sara at canafeast.com. And like I said, she has the coolest job. So, Sara, thank you again so much for being here. I can't wait to chat with you again one day.
Thanks so much, Mary. It's a real joy to be with you. God bless you, everybody.
St. Catherine of Siena said, "Be who God meant you to be, and you will set the world on fire." I hope you enjoyed this episode and that it lit a little match in you. You can visit my website at marygbruno.com and follow me at White Lotus Blooming. Connect with some amazing women and infertility resources at springsinthedesert.org, thefruitfulhollow.com, and catholicinfertilityresources.com.